Guys, welcome to episode 60 of the Austin Downbeat. Thank you so much for watching. I have such a special guest for you today. And also want to say happy 4th of July. This is coming out on the 4th of July, 2023. Hope you all have a great holiday and stay safe. What else did I want to say? Oh yeah, I mean, it's the 60th episode, so a little bit of a celebration over here. And just want to say thank you for all your support and just all the messages and sweet things that people say. Thank you. Keep it coming. I love doing this. It makes me so happy to be able to have these conversations and share them with you, and give you more access to those folks that play here in town and beyond, and give you a kind of a deeper knowledge of them and sense of who they are. So I love it. Thank you for all the support and keep it coming. All right, let's start with the rundown because that's what we do. So here's a little bit of the many people that are playing within this next week. This covers July 4th through July 10th. And here we go. As usual, I don't have my glasses on. So 4th of July, we have a couple, I chose a couple spots. So at the hot spot, you have Bob Schneider, Chief Cleopatra, Andrew Cashin, and Evan Charles playing at the hotspot. That's on 4th of July. Also, another nice other little chunk of players at the Hill Country Galleria. You have School of Rock, you have the Rock Bottom String Band, you have the Selfless Lovers, you have the Tiaras and Vallejo. And again, that's all at the Hill Country Galleria. On July 5th, you have William Wallace at New World Deli. You have Dearfellow at Geraldine's. On the 7th of July, you have Wendy Colonna, Jenny Reynolds, and Barbara Nesbitt all playing at the Red Bird Listening Room. On July 8th, you have Bonnie Whitmore at Pootie's, and you have Kelly McWee opening up for Shiny Ribs at the Paramount. On July 9th, you have at Green Hall, you have Andrea McGee, you have Amanda Shires and Asleep at the Wheel, and that is all for celebration for Bobby Nelson. And last but not least, July 10th, Monday, you have Monday Night Supper Club at El Mercado South, and you have Bob Schneider doing his residency at the Saxon Pub. I do want to give a bit of a shout out for next month. On August 13th, my guest today on the show, who needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce him anyway, is going to be at Emo's for a nonprofit benefit called Connor's Heart. And my guest today is Eric Johnson. He will be there with David Grissom, Vallejo, Roscoe Beck, and Lance Keltner. And that's to benefit, again, the nonprofit called Connor's Heart. So we'll talk a little bit about that as it gets closer as well, but I just wanted to tease that out. My guest today, as I mentioned, is Eric Johnson. He is from Austin. He's been playing and wowing us for decades at this point. We have a wonderful conversation about, well, all the way back to the beginning, for where it started to now, and coming out of COVID with not one album, but two, and everything in between. He's a wonderful, sweet man, beyond talented, as we all know. And I'm so happy to have the chance to just get to spend some time with him. He was very recently inducted into the Texas Heritage Songwriters Hall of Fame. The big party for that is in the very beginning of next year, in February of 2024. So we'll be talking about that as it gets closer as well. But super excited for him about that. And yeah, so I'm going to be quiet now and let you jump into the interview. But I want to say a deep, heartfelt thanks for all the love and support for me doing this show. And here's to 60 episodes and to many, many more. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Eric Johnson. All right. I'm so happy to welcome you, Eric, to the show. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you, Kat.
Yeah, you are my 60th episode, so I feel like this is super
really?
special. Yes, so congratulations to both of us.
Glad I could make that number. That's great.
Yeah.
Glad I could make that number, but also on your show, I guess.
Yeah, you and me both. I feel like you have so much going on right now. You're about to embark on a tour coming up at the end of August, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to talk about that a little bit.
Mm.
And I also want to talk about the Texas Heritage Songwriter Hall of Fame nomination that you just got.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you. That was a surprising honor. I'm very excited that I would get that. I mean, to me, it's important to try to write songs, and not just, you know, wham away on the guitar. So it's
Mhm.
nice to do that, to be able to go do that thing. Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about. I'm so curious as I've reflected on your career and the depth and the width of it. It makes me so curious to ask you about kind of how it all started. I know when you were little, you started playing the piano, which I was surprised to hear that the
Yeah.
piano is such a big part. Because really, before I dove into you, I really just think of you with the guitar, to be
Sure.
honest. And it's
Yeah.
been so fun to uncover all the other, degrees around
Mm.
you as a human, kind of how you approached all of
Mm.
this. You talk a little bit about being a little kid and starting at the piano and then like getting
Well,
into
I know I was real enamored of piano, and I wanted to take lessons, and finally taught my mom and let me start at 5 years old. And I just loved it. It was great. I had a wonderful teacher named Jane Weiss, and she taught me to try to develop my ear. And it was great. I took piano lessons for 7 years, and it kind of overlapped when I started guitar when I was 11. And that was really the birth of, rock and roll as I knew it, 60s rock and roll, that is,
Mhm.
with Yardbirds and, um, the Blues Breakers and all the early stuff. And so I got so pulled into that I was like, well, I don't want to play classical piano anymore. So I unfortunately stopped taking lessons, but I still play to this day. I just haven't really pursued piano on such a um, um, strong scale to where I could really excel at it. I mean, I'm a decent piano player, but I'm no Ling Ling or anything, or Van Cliburn or Glenn Gould or any of those guys. I could tech for them, I guess, but I don't know. Do you need that B flat tuned up there, Glenn, a little bit? But piano is really my first love, and it's my favorite instrument. Really, I resort to it a lot with my music, because it's kind of it's I don't know. I guess people that learn a language real well, they start thinking in that language. Which sometimes, if you speak 5 different languages, you still kind of filter through your first language or whatever. But that's kind of where I kind of filter through my first language, which is piano.
Hmm. Is it true? When you're composing a song that's not instrumental, that has lyrics, and you're singing that song, do
Uh,
you is there a certain way that you find yourself kind of writing that? Are you kind of hammering it out on the piano first
It's
or the
kind of a lot
guitar
on the
first?
sometimes just kind of improvising on guitar and you stumble on something. And I kind of try to let the song dictate whether it's instrumental or vocal.
Mm,
Um, the more I jump in the way and try to speed up or hold the paintbrush too tight, then it ends up not being all it can be.
yeah. When do you find yourself getting inspired? Are you like me where it's like right before I fall asleep, I'm like come up with something
That's
amazing and then I have to talk myself into like writing it
uh,
down?
yeah, it's funny you say that, Kat, because a few nights ago I had a dream about a song. And I think what set it off to be such a great song is that I didn't think it was me. I thought somebody had turned on the radio and they said, check this out. And it was like, oh my God, it was really like, it was really cool, and I don't say how well, I think of stuff like that in my dream all the time. I think it's kind of like field intelligence. And if we're in the right place, we pick up the radio wave, so
Yeah.
that being the case, I think I just happened to pick up this wave, but the song was like, and then I thought, God, I remember in the dream, this is a few days ago, I was like, well, I wish I could write a song like that, and then I woke up and went, oh, that was my song in the dream. Of course, I couldn't remember it once I woke
Oh,
up. So You know, it's very rare that I ever remember. Um, Probably a bit because I'm too lazy to get up, but I don't know.
Uh, do you remember, so you started on piano, did that for 7 years, and then who handed you your first guitar? Do you remember that sort of departure or like the contrast
My,
between the
yeah,
two?
my brother Bill had a friend named Bobby Spiller, and he had this really cool swinging Silvertone guitar and a Fender amp, and he would bring it over to my parents' house, and he would play surf music for us. And I remember, I mean, I heard guitar before that, but I remember that was the first time he like let me, check it out. I was just like, oh my God, what is this? And then a friend of my dad's had an old acoustic that was real funky, but they let me borrow that for, a week or so, and that's when I decided I wanted to learn to play guitar.
And so piano sort of moved off to the side. When did it hit you in your, because, I mean, I watch you play, I can, watch videos, watch you play guitar, and it's kind of mind blowing. When did you get to a point where you were like, even you maybe realized how gifted or special or kind of the level that you were going to take this to? Is that a conscious thought ever in this journey of
I think I,
yours?
I think I was just listening to all the records that I loved, and a lot of them were just hard for me to play, and I couldn't play them, and I just kept studying them, trying to pick out the parts, and I was kind of just hard on myself, like you got to get this, you got to get this, like an athlete training or something, and there, of course, that there's a balance with that. You can be too hard on yourself, obviously, but it's there's this fine balance between push, 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 and not being as good of a delicate friend to yourself you can be. But I was really pushing to play, and then a very close friend of mine named Vince Mariani really started. I played in his band. He played drums, and um, he kind of taught me to look at the big picture of playing guitar and try to tell a story. And I think he kind of opened up the idea of me playing in more of a way that would be I could do a profession with it, and we worked on original music together. And at the time, I was still copying note for note people like Eric Clapton. I didn't really have much originality, but I would copy my heroes, But I think that that's a part of the journey for people, to not be afraid or shy away from copying who they love, because that's
Mhm.
I think that's how writers learn to write great. They copy this and then they go to copy something else, copy, and then there's that uh, point where you go, okay, I've copied all this stuff, let me take this from that and take this from that, and like you start pulling your own recipe together from all the different pieces that you like, and that's where your originality starts, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with you. From a sonic perspective, though, when it is guitar, I mean, and it's an instrumental of guitar, does that also apply to how you find your sound? Because I think that millions of people could say, I could play 5 pieces of music and they could pick out yours because it sounds like you and the way that you play and emote through your playing. Does that develop the same way?
I think it does.
Yeah.
If it's important to you, if the sound is really important, then that's going to be part of your quest for what you do. And it's always been important to me. And I think it was because my heroes had such great sounds on the
Mm,
instrument.
yeah.
Um, and they were the people that they could play a couple notes. I go, oh, that I know who that is. Like Wes
Yeah.
Montgomery, you could one, two, three notes. It's like undeniably was Wes Montgomery, and that's just beautiful because there's something just really above and beyond about that makes the whole thing have a higher energy to it.
Yeah, I think we really feel that as listeners. It's like their soul is kind of intertwined into what they're giving us. And it's
Yeah.
I get to talk to musicians all the time, and I will never not be amazed by the level of entwined, how entwined they are into what they're giving us. And standing on that stage, I will always see it as vulnerability and so beautiful. Do you feel vulnerable when you're performing still? I know you've been doing it for a while. Like, what are your feelings now as a performer? Since I'm assuming you probably don't get nervous, do you?
Oh, I do sometimes,
Do
and
you?
I think that's good in a way. It
Yeah.
just means you care. I especially get nervous when I do solo acoustic and piano work or
Mm.
stuff like that. But not so much nervous, but I think you get used to it. But I think the more you can be comfortable with the unknown, the more opportunity there is for magic.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of times, if I think I might be doing a good show, I might not because it's all, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, instead of like just getting out of the way.
Hmm. Yeah. I think that applies even to 2 minutes before I was going to hop on with you. I kind of have to just throw it away and go, it's going to be
Right.
what it's going to be. And just sort of let the magic happen if it's going to happen, it's kind of
Ex-
neat way to live
yeah,
life.
sure.
Yeah. Let's talk about your heroes because I know as you were beginning to play guitar, I think the Beatles became a big influence. Am I correct in that?
Yeah. I mean, it started off with when I was a little baby and Elvis Presley and people like that.
Yeah.
And then later, when I started playing guitar, it was Noki Edwards of the Ventures, and then the Beatles, Brian Jones, Rolling Stones. There were certain records I just played over and over and over. And then I got into John Mayall and the Blues Breakers with Eric Clapton, and that led to the Yardbirds with Jeff Beck, which was a big
Hmm.
influence on me. And
Yeah.
then I started following those guys' careers as solo artists, and of course Jimi Hendrix, and
Hmm.
also at the same time I was really loving Wes Montgomery and stuff like that. Yeah.
Tell me about your love of Stevie Wonder.
Oh, he's like, I mean, when you think about like panoramic music, pop music, I
Hmm.
mean, there's the only two people come to mind for me is the Beatles and Stevie Wonder. I mean,
Hmm.
it just, I mean, he's an incredible musician on many instruments as well as vocals, obviously, but behind that, there's just this songwriting. It's just the records he made. Like one of my all-time favorite pop records ever made is "Music of My Mind" by Stevie Wonder, which he made
Hmm.
like in '72. It's just, I mean, he's like 21, 22 years old. It's like the greatest record there ever. I would say tell anybody if they haven't heard "Music of My Mind" that, man, I mean, that record is. I've played that record so much. It's like the soundtrack of my life, really.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I
Yeah.
might put that on later tonight.
Have you heard that record?
I mean, I would think I have maybe without realizing that that was, I mean, I don't think I've ever
Oh,
sat and
yeah.
really listened to a whole Stevie
Yeah.
Wonder record
You
before.
might like sometime when you got a lot of time and you can drive and just turn it on, put it on your car. I mean, it starts off with it just, love having you around is the first tune, and it's just like, man. And when the record came out, it was so fresh and different. I mean, it was just
Yeah.
nothing like it. But yeah, it's not. I don't know if it's the most popular, the most known record, I should say, like Talking Book and first fulfilling this finale and Intervisions and songs in the key of life. Those are known a little more, I think, than Music of My
Hmm.
Mind. But Music of My Mind was when that was the first record he made after the straight ahead Motown stuff, where he said, you know what, I'm going to do this big, wide, dilated thing that's just, I mean, the Motown stuff's phenomenal on its own. But when he decided to make Music of My Mind, that's when he like did this catharsis.
Mm. I think musician to musician, you can probably spot some of the deeper transitions and things that other musicians maybe are doing from album to album. Do you feel like a keener sense of like recognition because you've gone through your own journey yourself of doing that album to album?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and you can kind of track that track their journey. Yeah.
Yeah, like the evolution. Yeah.
Mhm.
Let's talk about the pandemic, and you came out of that with two albums. Are you
Mm.
playing those a bunch on this coming tour? Is that sort of your, how do you
Yeah.
structure what you play? You have such a
Yeah.
library.
Now I'm doing a set that we just finished doing 7 weeks on the West and Mountain States, and now we're gonna do the East Coast. We'll probably do some of the same stuff at least. And we're doing this whole acoustic set with the band on the
Mhm.
first set of the evening. But yeah, doing a few things off of that. That was kind of crazy. Some of that stuff was already recorded, and I decided to release it. And it was some of it was like demo, like done on a cassette. Just really not the recording. And then I added new stuff to it. But yeah, just kind of trying to think of what I could do when you're just, kind of isolated.
Yeah. How was that? I mean, I know that pandemic was hard, especially for musicians. It comes up almost every interview that I do. Were you able to find a way? I mean, a lot of people live streamed, and I mean, what did you find yourself doing to sort
Well,
of fulfill?
to be totally honest, I mean, you know, um, I did a lot of, stuff on the internet lessons. I did like 29 or 30 lessons to try to get people to pay for the food bank, help
Mhm.
people. And I did this record, spent a lot of time putting that together, like 26 songs and stuff. But
Mhm.
it was a tough period, you know.
Yeah.
It was a really emotionally tough period, and it was kind of subliminal. It almost like it I was so immersed in what I did because I didn't realize it, and then it's like you got like a bit of an earthquake going on, and you're so, trying to hold on to something, or like, maybe you're fixing something and you don't have time to really, and then all of a sudden okay, and then you look up and go, oh wow, and then you feel the Doppler aftershock, and
Right.
I think there's a bit of an aftershock from it. I mean, that you know some people, myself included, are still kind of reconciling with.
Oh yeah, I think it was trauma. I mean,
I
I think
I
that's trauma, right?
I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And try to light foot, like, I don't know, but yeah, I mean, it
I think,
was, it really,
yeah, yeah.
and I don't have to, I had friends pass away during the time, and it was just a real concentrated, tumultuous time.
Yeah, me too. I wonder if you agree. I found like those of us who lost people early on, like I did, and it sounds like you did. I feel like there was a real division. It was like if you experienced loss, you really handled the pandemic in a certain way with a certain level of seriousness. And then those people who I've encountered many in my life that didn't have that loss, that were able to experience it in another way. And it felt really like you're either in camp A or camp B. Does that feel
Mm,
true for
yeah,
you?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think I tried to stay in one camp, even though
Yeah.
things were really exploding around me, whether it was people dying or just things changing, your personal life changing, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, yeah, yeah. And you kind of try to hold on to the, as you say, one of the camps, but I think the other camp is creeping in.
Yeah,
And
because of
it's just
reality.
part
Yeah.
of life. Yeah, it's just part of life. But
Yeah.
it's interesting. I think one of the, you can get caught up in the Disneyland bubble, of life is this way. These people will always be here. My life will always be okay. I'll never get challenged by health, everything. You know what I mean? You like, because you have so much history with things being, with the 0 point being totally fine. You know what I mean? And so you just take it like, oh, well, this is just life. This is the way it is, but that can change. And I think the Disneyland bubble at some point in everybody's life is gonna get cracked. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's somebody's gonna peek behind the Wizard of Oz's curtain and go, "Oh my God, I didn't. I wish maybe I shouldn't have looked, but I looked, but I didn't want to be asleep and never look. Now I'm awake. I did look, but it changes things. It changes the bubble, the Disneyland aspect. But I think the
Mhm.
takeaway is just to really appreciate what we have when we have it,
Mhm.
whether it's, you know what I mean? And because because you can't like anesthetize yourself in the bubble and just go, well, this is always going to be this way because it's not, and that's a real, I think that was accelerated by this COVID period.
Yeah, I think it really stuck it. I think it stuck it under a microscope for all of us as individuals and really
Yeah,
examining how we forced us to examine how we handle things, you know. It reminds me because I have something over the last year that's become a daily practice is I sit in quiet every morning, and the visual for me is to open the front door and open the back door of my mind, and I just allow, right? I just allow things to come in and go out. And I feel like that's kind of, I do that every day so that I can practice during the day to do that too, you know.
yeah,
And from a micro to a macro of really zooming back out and looking at life, like it really is about the flexibility and how I jockey back and forth between how big I am and how small I am in any given moment, you know.
mm,
And I think
mm,
that level of flexibility helps get through what we all know is coming, and that is hard stuff,
yeah,
life, you know. That's just kind
yeah,
of how it is. Nobody
yeah,
escapes it.
yeah, right, yeah,
Yeah. So I think the pandemic, although it was really hard, again, I talk to people every week and musicians, and there's so much gold that came out of it, though, too. So much writing, so much um, good stuff, too, that came out. And so it's nice to be reminded, too, that like from hard things, we also, if we have the words and the music to sort of grab them, we can share that too. So that's been really neat
yeah,
kind of result,
yeah,
you know?
wow, yeah,
Yeah.
wow,
Well, that was
good,
our deep little part.
yeah.
um, what else do I want to talk to you about? I feel like there's just so much. What
Oh,
is,
maybe acting career, if you wanted to touch on that, that'd be great.
oh yeah, tell me about it.
I'm, I have no acting career.
Do
This is
you want an acting career? Because
no,
I
no,
know some people,
no.
I used to be an actor.
Oh,
So,
did you really? Well, if they resurrect Beverly Hillbillies, I'll take that gig, but that's
ooh,
about it.
that would be
Yeah.
fun, wouldn't it?
Not
Um,
really.
you did a song
No.
you did a
Huh?
song on one of your on your latest album. You did one with Christopher Cross, who's a good
Uh-huh.
friend of yours. I always thought that he was from Santa Barbara because I would always see, did he live in Santa Barbara? Do you know?
Well, he lived in you know what? I think he did. He lived he lived several places in California for
I
10 or
feel like,
15 years
yeah,
or
yeah,
20
because
years.
I think we would see him around town. So I just always assumed that Christopher Cross was from Santa Barbara, but he's from San Antonio.
He is from Santa Antonio. Are you from Santa Barbara?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, paradise.
Oh, that's awesome. That must okay. That's cool. That's yeah, Santa Barbara. Wonderful. Yeah, I think he actually did live in Santa Barbara, I think. Yeah, he's from San Antonio. He
Yeah.
moved up like and when we were both like well, he was 21 or something. I guess I was 17 or 18
Well,
and he moved to Austin, yeah.
how did
And
you
we used
guys
to go
meet?
I'm sorry.
How'd you meet?
Um well, there I was with the group Mariani, Vince Mariani. We were opening for Deep Purple in San Antonio. And Chris knew all the deep Richie Blackmore Deep Purple songs, and Richie Blackmore had gotten food poisoning that day and couldn't play the gig, and they didn't cancel the gig. This was at a big venue called the Jam Factory, which is a really cool. It was like the Fillmore of San Antonio. So Chris got the gig to fill in for Richie Blackmore that night. So I met him on that gig, and yeah, he used my amplifier and everything. He just kind of showed up. I mean, Chris at that time was like a rocker. He was a real tall, skinny guy with shoulder length hair and a beard, and he played like a flying V. Yeah, it's totally different than the rest of
Sailing.
the music that he did later. But yeah, and then we met then, and we're friends ever since.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Um, that's so cool. Um, your touring band, I wanted to ask you about local guy Dave Scher. And I ask about
Yeah.
him specifically because I'm having his girlfriend on my show next week, Andrea McGee,
Oh,
who I love so much. I don't know if you know her.
yeah.
You probably
She's
do.
great. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
she's great.
amazing. And I want to get him on too. But here's what blows my mind, because the fact that I think there have been shows where you get on piano and Dave plays your guitar parts, that must just be like, first of all, how do you pick someone and go like, okay, that's the guy that's going to play my insane guitar parts, and just to have
Well,
that.
Dave's a really fine musician. He's a really fine guitarist, but he also plays bass and drums and he
Mhm.
plays keyboards. And it's just it's an honor and to privilege to work with somebody like that, to where I can just do other stuff and he can cover any bases. And he's got his own style and his own music and band.
Yeah.
And then whenever we work together, he kind of tries to, embellish my direction, which is it's nice. He's that kind of musician. He can do a lot of different things.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so cool. I love that. Well, gosh, I'd love to keep talking, but I think we're gonna let you go. And
Oh,
thank you for spending time with me. I really appreciate it.
oh, thanks, Kat. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Have a great tour.
Okay.
And yeah, be safe out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this.
Of course. Thank you. All right, guys, that does it for another episode of the Austin Downbeat. And thanks for watching. We will see you next time.